All right, college baseball fans, welcome into the original Chasing Omaha, where we don't just talk college baseball here, man. We're gonna actually break it down. Who's built to win here? And tonight, I've got a little something different here. I'm bringing on a guy who's not sitting behind some network desk. He's not pushing for hot takes for clicks or anything like that. He's just a regular, everyday working dude, man, who decided to do his own little thing and dig a little deeper into the game and build something of his own. And I'm talking about my guy here, Bennett Bernard from Football in the Boot. And yeah, I know a football name, but that what he's built here is for college baseball model that breaks down the game down inning by inning, and showing you who's actually controlling it and not just who ends up on the top of the scoreboard. He's been grinding on this thing for a few years. From what we talked a little bit briefly today, and he's refining it. He's building it out. And tonight we're going to let him walk us through and explain how it works. And then we're going to put it to the test a little bit against some of the biggest questions in college baseball right now. So if you're tired of that surface level takes and you want to actually understand why teams win, well, let me tell you, people, you're in the right place tonight. So let's bring him on in here, my guys. Everybody, I want y'all to welcome my guy, Bennett Bernard from Football in the Boot. Welcome, Bennett. How are you, my man?
Great. I'm doing great, Sean. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, really excited to be on. I think I kind of mentioned it to you, but, I was with Chris and all them when kind of all this, way back before College Sports Crew, we kind of started a little thing for football, which is why my, X name is Football in the Boot. And then, it's evolved into now y'all have multiple shows and everything going on. And, there's a lot going on here. And so I'm really excited to kind of be back and, get to talk sports with you. Yeah.
All right, yeah, absolutely. So Football in the Boot, I'm going to assume we're talking about the boot of Louisiana right there, right? All right.
Yes,
So
correct. Yeah.
all right, all right. Well, I think what happened, well, Mardi Gras is over with. Y'all getting ready for Easter here, and where you can start eating again normal.
Right.
So yeah, so Bennett, let's you know what? Let's kind of jump in this thing, man. First off, before you tell us about the model, tell me what made you. You know what? There's all these things out here. What made Bennett go? You know what? I think I can make a model better. Talk to me. Tell me what happened here.
Yeah. So I've always kind of always just been into numbers. Dad's an accountant, and in theory, that was kind of the route I was going to go. At some point, and then at another point, I was like, I love the numbers and everything, but I don't want to be an accountant. And so kind of started learning a lot more, and kind of got into like kind of the data science kind of aspect of things, and kind of learning about how all that stuff works, and kind of got into some computer programming and everything. And then and always loved sports also. And so whenever I started learning about like the cross section of data analytics and sports and building models and things like that, just kind of started doing that. Honestly, I don't even remember when I created my very first one. It would have been maybe 7-8 years ago now. Was when probably I did my very first model, and a lot of it started with football. Again, why my tag is Football in the Boot. And so kind of started with football and everything, and then realized, hey, I could also do something similar for baseball. Always been a huge college baseball fan. And I felt like there just wasn't as much out there for baseball, especially in football. Everybody and their mom's got a model. In baseball, I feel like there's 4 or 5 that kind of float around. And so my hope is to kind of maybe join within that group and be the 5th one or whatever there. And so, just love to be able to look at the numbers of it and kind of, I watch sports very emotionally, and that's what I enjoy about it. The agony of defeat and, all that stuff, like they used to do on the commercial.
Right.
And so I enjoy being able to watch a game in an emotional state, and then going back and looking at the numbers after and understanding what happened, from a non-emotional standpoint.
Okay.
So I love having both of those there, and that's really, why I really enjoy doing this part
Okay.
of it.
All right. I like that. So you kind of see it kind of tells you if your emotions were justified a little bit, I guess.
Exactly.
Answer me this, because we talked about it and you were like, man, this is actually, I've simplified it over the years. So what are you measuring with this that the average fan completely misses? Like what is there that the fans, like I'd be like, this happened, but then you be like, man, this is important. Like this is, to my matrix, to my model.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times we look at, the two ways to look at it. One is the brief you're scrolling through online and you see, oh, um, so and so lost 5-4, and you kind of move on and you're like, okay, well, that's maybe, or let's say it's a 3-2, and you're like, okay, that's a lower scoring like pitcher duel or whatever, or it could be like 8-9, and you're like, oh, that's a higher scoring game. You kind of just have this feeling and just your intuition on those kinds of things. Then I think you have a lot of people that kind of dive in and start looking at like, oh, how many home runs does this guy hit? Or like this guy's the home run leader and things like that. And there's a lot of that out there already. And so one thing that I didn't see out there and where I kind of transitioned my model to this year, because in the past I've looked at like home runs or, extra base hits or batting averages and things like that. But one thing I transitioned to with this one is kind of looking at like a game control or like an inning control kind of perspective on it, where we look at the game inning by inning and look at the different ways that teams use innings to win games, if that makes sense. And maybe as I kind of explain it more, maybe it'll make a little more sense on what I mean by using innings to win games.
Okay, yeah. So okay, I was fit to ask you, what do you actually mean when you say controlling innings? But was there a moment when you started this? Like, well, first off, first question: this, how has your model evolved from what you said you started? What? How many years ago? You said.
Well, football probably would have started maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and
Okay.
then baseball. I think like 3 years ago, maybe was the first time I did like for the full season, did a model.
3 years ago. Okay.
Probably
And
something like that.
how has it evolved? How has it evolved? How has it evolved? And also, was there a moment when you went, holy crap, this actually working right now? Like this works. Did you have one of those, I guess, eureka moments?
Yeah, well, I think when I first did my model, I remember there were some, I mean, as you kind of expect, there were some negative comments from some fans that thought their team was lowly ranked. I think I replied to like a top 25 ranking. It was like, oh, here's my top 25 or whatever. And there was a team that, was probably like top 10, or I don't remember exactly, top 10, top 15, something like that. And I didn't even have them in my top 25 or whatever. And everyone was like, well, how that, this model's trash because it doesn't have this team in the top 25 or whatever. And I want to say that team may have ended up losing a handful in a row or something like that. Like my model, I won't say it was perfect or anything like that, but my model saw things that, like you mentioned, like the average fan maybe didn't see. The average fan looks at a team and says, oh, they're 17-2 early in the season. They're great. But then you start looking at who they played, how they won those games and things like that. And some of that starts to break down and you say, yeah, they found ways to win and they're 17-2. But at some point, if you're not executing like on the small things, they're going to catch up to you and you can start losing games along the way. And then from there, over the years, my models evolved just based on what data I've had access to and things like that. Like last year, I had one that was very involved, kind of looked at not necessarily inning like play-by-play, but very granular in a sense. And about halfway through the season, ran into some data issues and the model kind of fell apart. And so like last season, I didn't have a model for the whole season. It was only like the first half. Kind of just led into too many issues that I just didn't have time to resolve.
Okay.
So that's why this year I kind of took a step back and said, okay, what's some reliable data I can get access to, but still tells the story, like I was saying, still tells that number story that separates it from the emotional side of things.
Okay.
And so that led me into this year's model.
Okay, so you're strictly going off of numbers, like that's off of data, right? So
Correct.
When you say you're tracking innings, right, or controlling innings,
Yeah.
Is it more about pitching dominance or situational hitting, or is there something deeper? What separates, or how does your model define those, and how does that work without giving your secrets? But I'm so interested because, dude, it's just number one, I'm good at numbers, but I hate doing numbers, and so I would hate having to do that, like and have to watch over that. So yeah, walk us through that.
Yeah. So I did some kind of digging around, and I kind of had some ideas going into it. So I mentioned the numbers focus on the way you produce runs each inning of the game. So that was kind of the direction I knew I was going with the model this year based on the data that I had access to. And then I sat there and I think there were certain things that I kind of knew, and I think baseball fans kind of know, like intuitively, like, I mean, just things like, well, yeah, you want to score runs in more innings than you don't, like that's kind of intuitive. Or like, uh, you can intuit like a big inning, you have a 7-run inning, like that's probably going to win you a lot of games, even just that one inning alone. So that was kind of some of my starting points. And then, so I kind of took those hypotheses and did some testing with them and things like that. And that led me to where my model ended up being by the time the season started. And it focuses on 3 factors of the game. And we can dive into those a little bit. So as I mentioned, an obvious one is like your ability to score runs in different innings. Like, are you a team that's going to score runs in 1 or 2 innings a game and hope that's enough to win? Or are you a team that's going to score in 5 or 6 innings in a game? And so that's the first factor, is how many innings are you scoring runs in? The second factor is the one I also kind of mentioned, was kind of that big inning. Like, are you a team that can produce that 7-run inning? Because if you look at the numbers, around 7 or 8 runs is usually where like an average for number of runs for the winning team. And then like 4 or 5 is kind of your average number of runs for a losing team in a game. Now, obviously there's spectrums of that. We talked about, you have your 3-2 pitching battles, and you have got your 9 to 10, home run derby games. And so, so the point being there with that second, like data point, is some teams can go out and maybe they only score in 2 innings a game. Maybe they get 2 runs in the second, but then they have a 7-run fifth. Well, now they've got 9 runs. Whereas a team that might be a little more consistent, if they're only scoring 1 run in an inning, you're going to score in all 9 innings to score 9 runs. So you kind of have those 2 different types there. And then I went in and did some more digging and research and stuff, and found a third one that I currently call a power inning, but is in a sense like kind of a momentum shifting inning. And that's where you score 3 runs or more in an inning. And your team's ability to do that maybe once or twice in a game. And so some of the interesting findings there are, like, the magic number that I've determined is the magic number is 3. Basically, if you score in 3 different innings, then you would count that as like your offense being productive. Whereas if you scored only in 2 innings, then your offense is not productive for the game. The next one is, as I mentioned, that power or momentum inning, which the magic number is 3 there. So if you have 1 or more power innings in a game, then that's a positive offensive productivity. Or if you have no power innings, then that's a negative offensive productivity. And then same for your max inning. So if your highest scoring inning in a game is 3 or more, then that's positive. And if it's 2 or less, then that's negative. So it's kind of a way to look at it. Whereas, like, you can look at a football game and they're like, oh, a 3 and out, like, oh, now they're going to get good field position, things like that. You don't have that in baseball per se. But this was a neat way to kind of quantify it and see, hey, like, look, yeah, there's no field position kind of thing. But if you're not scoring, if you don't have a 3-run inning, you're missing out. Like, your offense is helping out the defense more. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to assume that this finds those trends and finds those data points for different teams like that. So I promise all my listeners that are out there right now, we're going to get in this. I'm going to test this man's theory.
I may have rambled too much there.
No. Oh, no. Because I want to understand the model. It's me, because I'm asking these questions because I want to understand. So, question: where has your model been right when, say, D1 baseball was dead wrong, or have you exposed a team that looked really good on paper with your models in the past here and with this model here?
There have been some that, so this model again is newer, and so hasn't been, I don't want to say it hasn't been tested. The model's been tested when it was designed, but I guess hasn't been tested through the season. So this is my first time with this particular model going through the season with it. And there's also some adjustments in there. Like, there's some preseason data that's kind of used. And so, like, right now, the model, when I show it to you in a moment, the current ranking, it'll be 90% in-season data and 10% kind of data from last year. So there is kind of some holdover and things like that are in there that'll kind of be phased out. And so there's a sense in which there's two factors to it. So one is there's a grain of salt of, look, we're only, well, what, about a quarter of the way through the season. So, there's still a lot of baseball to be played, a lot of data still out there to be gathered. But then there is also a sense in which in only a quarter of the season, if you look at my top 25 and compare it to, say, like D1's top 25, there's some discrepancies, but a lot of the top teams do show up in both lists. So there is a lot of, proof in the pudding that even in only 25% of the season, there's still a lot of value.
Right. So yours is mirroring a little bit of the other ones. Mm-hmm. So, okay. All right. Well, okay. So you know what? This is where let's challenge this now. You know what? Let's, now that we know how it works, let's test it out.
Yeah.
So right now, big question: best team in baseball according to your model. Based on your model, based on your model, who's the best team in college baseball right now? Is it actually Texas, or are we overreacting to a hot start?
So that's interesting. Is I've got actually a graphic that I don't have queued up for this that maybe we could queue up in a moment. But yes, I have Texas as the best team in baseball right now, and even though once they suffered their first loss, and I think 2 now, it's a sizable gap right now. Again, it's early in the season. There's a lot of data still out there. But the gap between Texas and the next group is probably about as large as number 2 to. So the gap between 1 and 2 is probably somewhere between the gap of 1 and 20, or 2 and 20, I should say. Sorry.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. So with that being, so what does your model say about Texas? What does it like? What is it saying? Like, if you put it up and this is why, what would it say?
Yeah. So what the model does, and so as I mentioned, it's got those 3 primary factors. There are actually 2 secondary factors that we can talk about a little bit too, that kind of add a little more interesting twist to it. But the 3 primary factors are where most of the weight are. So what the model sees, and one of the graphics that I have that I post on my page is it looks at the offense and the defense for the team and I call it offense and defense because I don't necessarily, particularly on the defensive side, I don't necessarily break out like fielding independent pitching, like they have that stat FIP, versus like errors and things like that. So in theory, you could have a game where a pitcher could do a no-hitter, but they give up 3 runs because of a bunch of errors or something like that. And the model is going to see that as allowing a 3-run game. So it doesn't make a distinction between the 2 right now.
Okay.
But what we do is we look at the best stat that the offense or the hitting produces, and I also display what the worst stat that that hitting or offense produces, and then I do the same for defense. So with Texas, their worst offensive stat is that they're the number 2 team at producing scoring innings on the offensive side of the ball. So the fact that their worst stat is being number 2 shows a lot of like kind of that depth of what Texas has and why that gap between them is so big. For example, I have the number 2 team in the country is UCLA, and their worst offensive stat is also similar to Texas, their ability to produce scoring innings, but they're ranked 12th in that stat. So there's a 10 position gap between the worst of Texas and the worst of UCLA offensively. And then you'll see something similar on the defensive side of the ball too. And so that's part of what allows Texas to have such a big gap. And again, I think that part of that is just being early in the season. I think that gap will close. I can't imagine that gap is as big. Just kind of based on what I would think, that would probably be something similar to what you would see like with Tennessee a few years ago, where it looked like they were a runaway number 1 and then got upset by Notre Dame and all that stuff. And so that's why I think that gap with Texas will come down. I can't imagine we're seeing something similar to that.
Right. Well, and UCLA is ranked number 1 in D1 rankings right now. Texas number 2, Georgia Tech number 3, which I think they just lost to Auburn. So I expect that to go down there. Auburn really showed up with that game there against them. So, so do you have, looking at your model, for maybe some of our betting fans out there, who does your model love that the rankings are sleeping on right now?
I meant to pull up D1 baseball ranking. before this, got home a little late from work, so give me a quick second to pull up D1 baseball. But
Okay.
some that I know. Interestingly, I have. Well, okay. So here's where I think looking at all the data helps interpret it. So one team that I have pretty high up there is West Virginia.
Okay.
And I think West Virginia is starting to be ranked and things like that in a couple of the polls. I'm pulling up D1 right now.
Yeah, they're number 20 in D1 right now. And they were not ranked last week.
Okay, so they went from unranked to number 20. I have them number 12. I don't recall where they were last week, but they probably would have been up there in that range too. Usually you don't see a huge jump in my model from week to week. Sometimes you do if weird things happen. But like I've got West Virginia at number 12 in the country. Now that's based again on like their average of all these different stats that I have. So they have real high upside where their offense, I have them as the 5th best team at producing those scoring innings, kind of similar to what we talked about with the weaknesses of Texas and UCLA. So they're kind of a little bit different where I have them number 5 in the country at producing those scoring innings. But they're only 24th at producing like that one inning that can like win you a game kind of thing, that max scoring inning. And then maybe even more interestingly on the defensive side of the ball, I have them 9th best at and not allowing those scoring innings, but they are all the way down at 47th on allowing that allowing big like multi-run innings. So their threat for West Virginia is allowing like a couple 3-4 run innings a game kind of thing, and that's hard to come back from. So basically what I'm getting at there is I have West Virginia a lot higher because, again, it's looking at like an average, whereas they have a very high upside, but also a fairly low downside. Like a downside that would be a threat. Like let's say we started the postseason today, they could be a potential threat to be upset in a regional kind of thing because they have such a low downside at number 47 on the pitching side of things.
Okay. Now let me flip that a little bit. Who in your model is ranked pretty high? Who's ranked pretty high right now in say D1, and that your model is saying, hey, you know what, they're living on borrowed time. And I have a team, and I hate to say this because my Arkansas Razorbacks according to D1 are number 4, but I just don't have a warm fuzzy about them. They just don't feel like the Razorbacks of old to me.
Yes. So correct. So Arkansas is one. Actually, so when I mentioned earlier at the start of the show that I got hate for a team being ranked low, like the very first year I did my model, it was Arkansas. And so once again, I have Arkansas. Actually, they bumped up, I believe, last week from what I had them last week. I don't recall what it was, but it was even lower than this. But I have them 21st right now.
Okay.
A fairly solid pitching team. Actually, let me pull this up.
And you're right, they're solid, but they're not dominant in pitching like they have been. Like to me, they just like they squeaked by Mississippi State because Mississippi State made mistakes and let them get back in especially that last game of the season of last week. So I just don't have a warm fuzzy feeling with them with that. And so while you're looking that up, and that's another team I brought up to you, Arkansas State. Arkansas State beat them in a midweek game, and I mean beat the brakes off of them. Yeah. And then Arkansas State this week, this weekend they beat Southern Miss, who is number 12 by D1, and I mean they beat the brakes off of them. So I think that Arkansas State team is a little bit better, and I'm curious. That's why I was curious if you had anything what the model said about them, at some point, just because to see what your model if it tracked with what we see with results, with Arkansas State, and Arkansas also.
Yeah, so okay, with Arkansas real quick, like we said, like solid defense. I've got them number 7 in the country on defense. And the weakness isn't too low. The weakest I have on their defensive side is that they're the number 11 power or like momentum defense. So like allowing those 3-run innings, things like that. So basically point being, you wouldn't expect them to allow a 3-run inning or multiple 3-run innings unless they're playing a real top offense. But offensively for Arkansas, I've got them number 58 in the country, which feels really low. Especially for a team that D1 baseball has gotten the top 5.
Did you say defensively?
Sorry, offensively.
Offensively, okay.
58 in the country. And so some of like the concerns that are there is the way my model kind of works is it takes all the data from the game and kind of breaks it down into a scale of like how much it's helping your team win versus how much it's hurting your team's ability to win.
Okay.
And so Arkansas, in the games that they win, are only like in the 60 to 65% range. So, like 50% would be right in the middle. Anything below 50% would be like a losing effort. Anything above 50% would be a winning effort. So in the games that they win, they're only 10 or 15% above into that positive threshold. They're things like that. Whereas in the games they lose, they're 20 to 25% into the losing threshold. So basically the games that they're losing, their offense is playing much worse than in the games they're winning, if that makes sense.
No.
So basically, to put it one way, is their offense is hurting them and causing them to lose more games than their offense is helping them to win games.
Right.
Now, obviously, as we mentioned, I have them as the number 7 defense pitching staff in the country, and some of their stats defensively are very strong, especially in games that they win. Especially in games that they win, and even in games that they lose, kind of the reverse side of their hitting, where even in the games they're losing, their pitching is still keeping them like in line with the ability to win. So they're real close to where, like I said, they're the number 58 offense in the country, but I've got them number 21 overall in the country. If they just could find a way to score, say 1 or 2 more runs a game, their offense still might be only number 35 in the country or something like that, but it might catapult their overall to a top 10 overall.
Okay. So basically, what your model is saying, if you go look at your model, your model saying that right now what's hurting Arkansas is their hitting, their production and hitting and scoring runs in for that right there. So hitting is their weakness. Okay, I got you on that. So I'm going to assume I was going to ask you, but your model says right now they're 58, which is not really a team that you expect that would win the whole thing this year. And I'm obviously they're not actually controlling the games like an Omaha team should, right? With what your model is. Besides the hitting, or is that the only thing for Arkansas to prove for you to buy in? What does Arkansas need to prove to you or to your model? Is it just the hitting aspect of it?
Yeah, from a hitting aspect of it, if I took my numbers and I was like, let me watch what Arkansas does this weekend kind of thing and see if they can force my numbers to change. Because that's kind of the game you want to play whenever you look at it this way. Is you're like, okay, here's what we've seen so far. What do they need to do to force these numbers to change? First thing I would need to see from Arkansas and to convince the model to change its mind is definitely going to be the big inning. Arkansas needs to be able to produce consistently these like 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, you could go on and on. These big innings, like the kind of inning that like, oh, that inning's enough runs to win the game on its own, especially with the defense that Arkansas has. If they can produce a 6-run inning, they're going to win the game more often than not, because they're not going to allow 6 runs, again, unless they're playing a top offense or something like that.
Right.
And so that's definitely phase 1 for Arkansas. And then to kind of go along with that is just in general, the ability to produce these multi-run innings. So that's what I'd be looking for Arkansas. So if I were to sit down and watch a game, or Sunday night, you look at the box scores, I would pull up Arkansas's 3 games this weekend and try to find the number 5 in there. I feel like that would just be like off the top of my head. I feel like I would look for an inning where you got 5 runs. Like if I'm not seeing any of those, then I'd say, hey, the model's onto something. It's not changing its mind. Things like that. But if you could see, oh, maybe Friday night they got a 5-run inning, and then you're like, oh, maybe a 4-run inning on Sunday, something like that, then you could say, okay, maybe Arkansas is turning things around. So that's what I'd be looking for. I'd be looking for Arkansas to find some momentum within a particular inning and start producing runs. I think that'd be the biggest sign that things are changing in Arkansas.
Okay. All right. So just real quick, from the start of the season to this, just because I'm an Arkansas guy, have you seen anything on your stats that show that Arkansas is making that push that way, or are they regressing, or does your model work like that?
I can pull that up. The only trick is being so early in the season. The best comparison would be to last season, which I could pull it up in just a moment to see where I had them at the end of last season. That would be the better comparison. I think
Okay.
just looking at just a couple weeks, it'd
Oh,
be hard to look at an actual trend in that.
okay. I got you. So it takes a little time. So, okay. So now I'm going to ask you some questions here, and then we're going to get into some games this weekend with your
Okay.
model and see what's going to happen here and what your model is going to
Put some predictions to the test.
Yeah, let's put some predictions because my guy Jamal from Athletes Forum podcast, he made a comment here that he said his head he tuned in as soon as you said bet. So my guy there, so we could definitely do that. And also, too, guys, when this show's over, stick around because my guy's coming on at Jamal at Athletes Forum podcast. He's coming on and doing his show 30 minutes after we get off here. You don't want to miss it, man. He puts on a top rate show, man. And guys, if you're out here watching this right now, we are on YouTube here at College Sports Crew. Y'all hit that subscribe button. And when you get a chance, you know what, go check us out at X, at College Crew on X, and hit that like button there. We sure would appreciate it. That's how we get our message out right now. So now I'm going to ask you some questions here, Bennett. You know what? And you're down in Louisiana, and it's cool. And we can talk about your model, but you can also, I want you to, if you're an LSU fan, then come on off and give me some of that emotion too, brother. What the hell is going on in Baton Rouge right now? Like, what is your model saying? But then, what are you seeing? I mean, first off, are you an LSU fan when it comes to baseball or sports down there, or is that your team?
Yeah, it might be a sin. I don't know, but I actually do support a couple teams here in Louisiana. I grew up as an LSU fan, particularly in football, but I live in Lafayette, and so a Raging Cajun at heart.
Raging Cajuns. There you go. All right,
and that's my alma mater.
Okay.
So I do support both teams, and but I support my alma mater, and so I do actually baseball wise, I prefer the Raging Cajuns. They're the ones I cheer for. And LSU came to Lafayette a few weeks ago, and I was in the stands wearing red and everything. But when they're not playing each other, I do support LSU too. I watched them win the national championship last year and was cheering for them and all that. So I know that there are a lot of LSU fans that are scratching their heads right now, and some that are trying to fire a coach that's already won multiple national championships for them, and things like that. And so we can kind of look at what's going on a little bit there.
Yeah. So let's take a look. Tell me what your model says. And then I want you to get on a personal level and what you see, let's take the model out of it as an LSU, a secondary LSU fan. Is this a slump or is this something fundamentally broken? I don't think it's going to be the coach. Just no way in hell. Get off of that guy. So, but yeah, what's your model saying? And then, does it correlate with what you're seeing?
Yeah. So okay. So there's a neat secondary factor to my model that is maybe a little hard to I think it's easy to explain, but maybe it's hard to completely grasp in terms of what its value is. And so that's why it's kind of a secondary feature to it. But one of the things it looks at is which innings are you scoring in? And I broke that down into what I call impact innings and foundation innings. So the simple thing is the general premise of it was that an impact inning is usually around the time that pitching changes occur, where a foundation inning is like the pitcher's settled in, let's see what he's doing kind of thing. And interestingly, like once I did some analysis and kind of found what innings kind of paired together for that, and it kind of matched with my intuition on that. So, so the big, so there are two major factors for LSU, but that statistically, when you look at it, you see, but then also, like you mentioned, kind of as a fan, what am I seeing, in my heart and things like that, and the emotional side of things. So LSU is a make or break team when we look at the inning breakdown on foundational innings as opposed to impact innings. There's a big distinction between when LSU wins and LSU loses on that. And so what that means, the foundational inning is going to be innings 2, 3, 4, and then it also technically includes 8, but most of it is going to be bulked in 2, 3, and 4. So really, if you're watching an LSU game, at least from what we've seen so far this season, by the end of the fourth inning, you should generally know if LSU is going to do enough offensively, I should say. On the defensive side of the ball, it's a little different. But offensively, you should know if they're going to do enough to win a game. So if the fourth inning ends and LSU's only scored one run, they're not going to – the chances of them coming back and making a run are very slim. Now, we did kind of see them make a run against Vanderbilt the other day late in the game, and then that got, tossed out the window when Vanderbilt made a run of their own.
Right.
So that's one of the things there. And then also, interestingly, I think, too, and maybe this is kind of where it gets into a little bit of like what you're seeing as a fan and maybe why things feel different this year, besides the fact that they're just losing some games, is that max inning. Like when you think of LSU baseball, you think of like they load up the bases, the next guy comes up and knocks it over the fence, and you got a home run. That's a 4-run inning. But maybe there's still only one out, and they still bring another run or two in before the inning ends, things like that. So like when you watch LSU baseball, especially with their championship seasons, that's what you're expecting. You're expecting those like 6, 7, maybe even like 9-run innings, things like that.
Right.
And that's where LSU's kind of struggled this year. They just haven't been putting up as many of those this year. And that's where I have them listed as their offensive weakness. So in terms of their ability to do that, I have them at 48th in the country there. So not a great place to be, especially for a team that was looking for a repeat national championship. And then, so I guess on that note, offensively, I have them at the 34th best offense in the country.
Okay.
Now, the bigger concern is on the defensive side of the ball and the pitching, where I've got them at 88th at best in the country. And really not a lot showing well on the defensive side of the ball. And the big weakness of allowing these 3-run innings. So we talk about how LSU is not putting up these big, massive innings that can win games. And then on the flip side, they're allowing teams, maybe not to produce these massive innings, but they're allowing teams to get 3-4-run innings and maybe even multiple of those a game. And when you're just giving the other team momentum, and you can't swing that momentum with a 7-run inning of your own, you're not going to win games.
Right.
And so that's where LSU's problems are coming in. At least, from the stat side of it, and I think it kind of also got into the emotional side, there too.
Right. Okay. So they're not scoring runs like they usually do, and not in bunches like you. And you're right. You do expect LSU to have those big run innings. How many times have they won a game with a grand slam base loaded? I mean, they've done it in the the national championship before. I mean, they've had legends, kids that were made legends after something like that happened like that. So. I know your model can't tell us this, but from a personal view, is this something that LSU can fix before the end of the season? Do you have faith in the coach that this is going to get fixed?
If the question's faith in the coach, then I would think so. If the best, if not one of the best coaches in college baseball, I think the expectation is they figure things out. They maybe make changes in the rotation, especially to fix the defensive side, and maybe some younger guys step up and start hitting the ball better. You got to think that happens. And that's one good thing about baseball in a sense is that, bad weekend against Vanderbilt. And then now, you got a very good Oklahoma team coming in this weekend. If LSU drops 2 out of 3 of those, people are going to start losing their minds and things like that. But the good thing is you still have a lot of time to change things. This could be a team that's a middle of the road SEC team, goes into the SEC tournament and makes a run to the championship game. Maybe they don't win the championship game, but they make enough of a run and they're a solid 2 or 3 seed, or probably 2 seed going into the regionals, something like that. I think all that's still on the table, especially in baseball where you have so much time to change things, so much time for young guys to get up and figure things out.
Okay. All right. So, we got 20 minutes here left. So let's get into some games that might expose all of this right here. And let's, you just brought up the Oklahoma LSU game. According to your model, who controls the series? Does LSU have the edge, or is Oklahoma are they walking into a vulnerable LSU team? Which that's what I think is going to happen. And what innings will decide this series right here? Is this an upset alert or bounce back moment? Well, and I don't even know if you want to call it an upset because if I'm not mistaken, I don't even think LSU is LSU could upset Oklahoma because LSU's not even ranked anymore.
Right. Okay, so let's do an attempt of this and see. I do have a graphic for this one. So let's throw it up and see if it fits on the screen. Because I know we had an issue before where it didn't fit on the screen. So let's see if this one fits.
Is that the top 100 one you wanted?
It'll be the third one, OU LSU.
Okay. There we go.
Sweet. Perfect. Okay. So here's the little scorecards that I make, or like I call them series cards for each game. And so I tried to simplify it in a way that gives us enough information to tell a story. But I know it can also be a little cryptic. So really what we'll do is we'll start on the right side where it says key matchups. And we can just look at simple things like overall. So like you talked about, Oklahoma's coming in as the favored team. They're the better team on paper, things like that. And we see that there. I've got Oklahoma at number 7, LSU at number 55.
Okay.
And then from there, we can work our way down and we start looking at matchups. So we start with high level, just offense versus defense. Okay. And you can see Oklahoma's number 14 overall offense. LSU's 88 overall defense. So very leaning towards Oklahoma on that sense of things. So expect Oklahoma to put up a lot of runs.
Okay.
Then we drop down from there and look at the other side of the ball. So when LSU's batting, now that one's a much closer matchup than what we saw when Oklahoma is hitting, but things still lean towards Oklahoma even when LSU's at the plate. So it might be a little difficult for LSU to put up some runs. From there, actually, let's move back to the left side because this one will be interesting. So here's where I drew 2 lines to kind of show, even though Oklahoma's number 7, LSU's number 55, like that's a big gap. But when we look at teams' strengths and weaknesses, we can see that gap's actually not as big. You can see the bottom line for Oklahoma, and maybe the lines will make a little more sense when we pull up another matchup, but because the gap's so big, it's a little hard to see. But basically, we're looking at the strengths for Oklahoma, and their strength is that they're number 7 overall. So that's just the combination of every stat combined puts them at a very high top-level team. And their weakness is that they allow these 3-run innings. That I keep bringing up. There's kind of the momentum innings. And now, interestingly, LSU's strength is producing those 3-run innings. So despite the fact that there's a huge gap between the number 7 overall team and the number 55 overall team, there's an interesting dynamic here where Oklahoma's ability to prevent those 3-run innings and LSU's ability to produce them are pretty darn close. And so there's definitely a threat where LSU could produce enough 3-run innings to win this game, to win a game, to win 2 games and take the series, something like that. That threat's definitely there.
Okay. All right.
And then that kind of, again, brings us, we're going to go back to the right side again. And if you look on the bottom row on the right side, that's kind of where I have that breakdown. So we see that Oklahoma's number 21 in 3-run innings allowed. LSU's number 28 in producing 3-run innings. So it does lean towards Oklahoma, but 21 versus 28, pretty even matchup when you're talking about a distinction between 300 teams.
So this is a series that could go either way then, according to what your matrix is saying.
Could go either way, especially when you're looking at that ability to produce 3 runs. Mm-hmm. Now, well, for LSU's ability to produce 3 runs. Now, interestingly, on the other side, there's a huge gap between Oklahoma's ability to produce 3-run innings and LSU allowing 3-run innings.
As I see that.
That's LSU's weakness. So we're looking at number 14 versus number 141. I think that number will come up for LSU. I think that's a little bit skewed right now. But, I mean, I don't expect it to jump up to like number 15.
Okay.
So I think Oklahoma is definitely a threat on producing these 3-run innings that could have them run away with the series. But the distinction that I'll mention here is that when we talk about 3-run innings, and I kind of mentioned it at the beginning, we're talking about like 1 or 2 3-run innings is enough to be like to win a game. So point being, even though Oklahoma's got a huge advantage on that side, it might just mean they produce 1 3-run inning, but we can also see that LSU can produce a 3-run inning. So LSU could produce one that cancels out Oklahoma's, and now you're back to maybe something that's a little bit closer. So I think based on the numbers, based on what we've seen this season, I think this series goes Oklahoma. But I think LSU's got a shot definitely of taking one game and could be a threat to take two because there's some overlap in the top and the bottom, as you can see on the left side with the bars.
Okay. All right. So with that being said, now we've got it straight from Bennett Bernard on his set. He is Oklahoma. His model says Oklahoma. So now you know what. With that being said, let's move to the Texas Auburn, and I believe that's the one that right here we got this one. What does this one tell you? And I will say Auburn had a very key win this week here with against Georgia Tech. So yeah.
Big win over Georgia Tech for Auburn. And I think, again, weekday games, maybe some people say they don't matter. I think take them for what they are. Take them for the fact that they're weekday games. You're seeing maybe depth in the pitching staff and things like that. But I think regardless, I think the fact of what you saw Auburn do and effectively shut down a very good Georgia Tech offense, I think that speaks a lot to an Auburn defense that I already had ranked number one in the country. And so what I'll say real quick too is my model is rerun on Monday morning. So a game last night isn't included in the model.
Okay.
So this number one Auburn defense is probably only going to move up unless they look terribly against Texas this weekend. And so you can see here, interestingly, because Auburn's got the number one defense and Texas has the number one big inning offense, there's the two bars overlap in that sense at the top. But then you can also see that Auburn's low is a lot lower than Texas's. But it's still enough to keep Auburn at the number 4 overall team in the country. So again, because you're looking at 1 versus 4, I think this is a series that could go either way. So the question is, what are those factors that are going to determine where this series goes? And it's interesting that it's actually the same thing for both teams. The biggest advantage that both teams has is their pitching's ability to not allow these 3-run innings. So you can see Texas is number 5 in the country at not allowing 3-run innings, and Auburn's number 51 at producing 3-run innings. So a big advantage to Texas. Right. Now, for Auburn, they do have the advantage here where they don't allow 3-run innings, and Texas is number 2 at producing 3-run innings. So it's still an advantage to Auburn, but it's a much smaller advantage there. So yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just this game is really one of those games that's good on good, is what this is right here.
Yeah, this is definitely an elite matchup. I think some people are high on Auburn, so I don't think my model's seeing something necessarily with Auburn that other people aren't. But maybe with me having Auburn at 4, it might be a little bit higher than some of the others. I was trying to see where D1 Baseball's got him number 5, so not much of a difference there. But again, yes, this should be a good-on-good matchup. And so, yeah, so I think this was definitely, if you're like, hey, I'm going to watch one series this weekend, this would be my pick for it. Again, yeah, a good-on-good matchup. And so look at, again, so this is the way I would approach it. Is I would say, look, we got a good-on-good matchup. The real good-on-good is going to be Texas offense versus Auburn pitching. So when Texas is at the plate, like that's the epitome of the best of college baseball that we've seen so far this season, those matchups there. And then if you're also watching the game, look at who can score or if someone scores a 3-run inning, because that's where like both of these teams are hinging on that there.
Okay.
So watch the game and see like, oh, hey, like make note in your mind, hey, Texas scored a 3-run inning in the 3rd. Let's see if that's enough to produce a win for them, things like that. So keep an eye on that this weekend in this series. Yeah.
Okay. Now, according to your model right here, just if you were to look at it, who does your model say is going to win? Or is this kind of one of those you pick them models right here, deals here?
What I would do here would be interesting. Like if I were to bet, let's say, on who would win the series here, this would be a tough one. Again, it's 1 versus 4. It's at Auburn. I hope I'm not wrong there, but I'm 99% sure it's at Auburn. I believe I put it in that way. And so...
yeah, Texas is at Auburn. Yep.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. So, there's that home field advantage factor and everything, which, maybe balance out that 1 versus 4. But the concern that I would see is when you look at the bars on the left side, Texas's lowest ranking is 5 in one of my stats, whereas Auburn's number 51. I think that's a concern there. And so I would lean towards Texas for that reason.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean Auburn can't do it. Because if you want to
Right.
ask, can a team do it? I would look at the top, and you're looking at 1-1. There's a lot of potential there. But if you want to talk about depth and things like that, if things get murky, if things go off the rails, it's going to be Auburn going off the rails more than likely. So
Okay.
I would lean towards Texas in this series. But I mean, this is going to be like a 2-1. I don't expect a sweep or anything like that on either side. I think Texas maybe takes this one 2-1, and even that, it could be 2-1, but two of those games might be real close and could go either way, kind of thing.
Yeah. And you are playing at Auburn, so that's the Auburn definitely's got that win. I was going to talk about Florida at Alabama, but I'm curious because I'm going to put you on the spot here. How quick can you come up with something for Georgia, Texas A&M for my guy Chris? Normally is producing for me behind the scenes here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be Georgia it's number 7 Georgia at number 23 Texas A&M. I'm curious, is this something you can throw up quick, a matchup like you have here?
Okay, I got it. Here we go.
Oh my God, that's amazing! You did it that quick.
Let me see if I can get. Okay, I have it produced. Let me. I'll go team. Okay. Let me see if I can get it uploaded.
That's what we do here, folks. We put our guys on the spot, man.
Put the guest on the spot.
We put the guest under pressure.
All right, I generated it. I didn't even look at it yet. So okay, it should be there. You can pull it up, and we'll break it down live.
There it is.
I've not had a chance to look at it yet, so we'll break it down live.
All right. So Chris, our guy, when you get in and get to watch this later today, this part right here is for you, man. All right. So we got like 4 minutes, but we can go a little bit over, big guy. No big deal. But yeah. So let's this will be our last thing we talk about here, big guy.
Okay. So this one, another good versus good. As things stand, these are, honestly, as things stand, yeah, these are hosting caliber teams. These are the kind of teams that are going to host a regional, at least in terms of quality. You do run into the whole numbers game, how many SEC teams they let host and all that stuff and whatnot. But in terms of quality, these are hosting quality teams. Georgia, I've got number 13 overall. Texas A&M, I've got number 8 overall. Really fun kind of as opposed to the Auburn game where we saw that number 1 Texas offense versus the number 1 Auburn defense. You kind of have it a little bit different here where the strengths don't match up against each other. Georgia's got the number 3 overall offense in the country. Texas A&M's got the number 6 overall offense in the country. So instead of a strength for strength matchup, you're probably looking at a lot of runs in this series. This isn't to say these defenses and pitching staffs are bad by any stretch of the imagination. And of course, the games we keep picking for whatever reason keep focusing on these 3-run innings. I feel like everyone we've looked at has done that. So in both of these cases, the advantages to each team is going to be their ability to produce 3-run innings. And interestingly, where the upset by some standards, because I know some don't have. Like D1 baseball has got Georgia ranked well above Texas A&M.
Yes,
My model's got it the opposite, where Texas A&M's the better team, and in this matchup has a distinct advantage of their ability to produce those multi-run innings versus Georgia's inability, or Georgia allowing those 3-run innings. I've got Georgia number 64 in the country in allowing those 3-run innings, and Texas A&M's number 3 in the country at producing those 3-run innings. So that's going to be a thing to watch. Texas A&M to produce, across 3 games, maybe 3 to 5 of those 3-run innings would probably be what you'd expect there, maybe even more with this. And so the question will be if Georgia can counter and produce some of their own. Now, Georgia's got the number 3 offense in the country. So the model shows that they have an advantage in producing their 3-run innings, but really just Georgia producing runs in general is going to be the question, whatever way they do that. Whether it be scoring in multiple innings or a big inning that can turn things around kind of thing. So I think maybe that's one way I would kind of approach this, is to say Texas A&M is probably going to produce a few big innings throughout the series. Can Georgia produce enough cumulative runs to counter that? that's how I would kind of approach, like what I'll do is on Friday morning, I'm going to write up a little summary for a lot of these top matchups. And that's probably what I'll write is say, A&M should be able to produce a couple big innings. Can Georgia produce enough runs to overcome that? Yeah.
Okay. So according to this, who you have Texas A&M winning this series here, according to your data set here, right?
Yeah, the way my model is currently designed is you would generally always go with whoever's got the higher ranked overall. So in this case, it's 8 versus 13. You're also at Texas A&M, another little advantage there. But again, 8 versus 13, when you're looking at a range of 300 teams, the gap is minuscule.
Right.
So I'm going to lean A&M. And the other factor I would bring in is if you look at it, so A&M's offense is 6, their defense is 18, so they're top 20 in both of those. Right. Whereas Georgia, you've got number 3 offense, but a number 39 defense. Right. So again, similar to what we said with Auburn, if the wheels are going to fall off somewhere, if someone's going to blow someone out, we would expect A&M to blow out Georgia in this case because of Georgia, defense, things like that. So another thing to watch would be, can Georgia's defense and pitching keep them in the game across all 3 games? Right. That'd be another factor to look at.
Okay. All right. Let me take that. All right. Well, with that being said, y'all, so Chris, don't kill the messenger here, man. But I will say this. There's one thing that I don't know if your matrix, it doesn't, dude. I just love watching Georgia. I love their coach, Coach Wes Johnson. He's going to be the next Razorback baseball coach when Van Horn steps down. Chris is now mad at me when he hears that. No, dude, I love this team. I love the Georgia team because, man, that whole damn team can rake the ball. They can hit home runs. The last I looked, they were 66, I think, in home runs. And you know what? I can actually look that up right here. Overall, let's see, batting in the SEC, they're number 1 in SEC right now. They have 69 home runs, and they have, as a team, 222 RBIs. God, the next team's number 2 is 30 home runs at Mississippi State. This team just hits a damn ball. But yeah, their pitching needs to step up, like you say. Can their pitching keep them in the game? So this, I agree with you. But I love them because they just don't quit. And you know what? And they embarrassed Tennessee. They embarrassed the one kid from Tennessee with the bat flip thing. And I love that. I love that. Hats off. Tennessee's my team of the week. I'm sorry. We're team of the week for being dumb for that kid right there. And then Georgia's the team of the week for putting somebody in their place. So, yeah, go ahead, big guy.
Yeah, so I was going to say, because you kind of asked me, where's the model proving people wrong and things like that. And that was one thing that there were a lot of people out there that said, oh, Tennessee's going to prove that Georgia's offense isn't as good as it is and things like that. And I think Georgia proved them wrong this weekend. Now, granted, there was a rob that saved the series and all that stuff. But
that's baseball, baby. That's baseball.
Exactly. That's part of the game. And so I think that's one area where a lot of people said, oh, Tennessee's going to prove Georgia's not that good. And my model said, no, Georgia's going to take the series. And
okay, so your model predicted that.
Yep. All right. I had my model leaning towards Georgia on that one.
All right, Chris, your model worked with that one, and now he's saying it's not good. He said Tennessee. Texas A&M. Talk to Bennett. That's all I can tell you, big guy. So, hey, Bennett, man, I appreciate you being on here, and dude, I'd love to have you back on. At some point here, when you can, and I'd love to have you. And for everybody out there watching next week, man, I got a real special guest. I got Kyle Sutherland from Hog Beats. He's going to come in. He's going to talk some D1 baseball, especially Arkansas, going to get us filled in there. Arkansas Razorback ladies softball. And he is kind of the connoisseur of everything softball and D1. So we're going to bring that up because fans have asked for it, and we're going to do it. We don't just chase Omaha here. They chase Oklahoma City too. So, we're going to do our thing. And Bennett, anything you want to close on or end with here, bud, before we go?
The only thing I'll say, and granted the polls are starting to show it now, but watch out for the Sun Belt Conference. I've got 4 of them in my top 25 right now. They're starting to show up in D1's top 25 too, and things like that. So watch out for the Sun Belt Conference. I know they made some weekday noise. Let's see what happens once they really dive into conference play and things like that.
Who's your 4 teams? Who's your 4 teams in the Sun Belt that we need to watch out for?
This is good. Misspeak that it was 4. Let's see.
Well, if it's not, hey, this is good betting information, folks.
Here we go. I've got Southern Miss as the number 5 overall team in the country.
Okay. They're number 12 in D1.
Then I've got. Oh, maybe I lied. Maybe it wasn't top 25. Okay, I've got Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns at number 25.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Arkansas State. I know you had kind of mentioned them earlier. I've got number
Yes.
20.
Okay. All right.
And I feel crazy. Maybe it was 3 in the top 25. Oh, it's 4 in the top 30. And then I got Coastal Carolina at number 29.
Okay.
I know they're not playing as well as they are expected to, but one note on Coastal Carolina is 2 of their top 3 pitchers are out right now, and I forget when they're expected to return, but they're going to be out for a decent part of the season. So expect a big shift in their defensive productivity come the second half of the season. So they're not top 25 right now, but I kind of count them in that since they'll probably be there before it's over.
Okay. All right. So with that being said, in D1, Southern Miss is 12, Coastal Carolina is 16, and Louisiana is number 25. And I will say this about Arkansas State came in and beat the brakes off midweek on Arkansas, and they went in and handled business with Southern Miss. I think that team is good. I'm curious what your model is going to say at the end of the year about that team. That's a team I'm telling people to watch out for. Watch on, take a look at. And with that being said, guys, we're out of here. We appreciate y'all. This is Chasing Omaha. You know what? We're often imitated, but we're never duplicated. This is the original Chasing Omaha. We love you guys, and we'll see you guys next Monday. I'm sorry, I take that back. Next Friday at, I believe, 5 p.m. is when the showtime is going to be. It's going to be Kyle Sutherland from Hog Beats. It's going to be a SEC-driven and also an Arkansas-driven show there. So y'all make sure to join in, guys. And Bennett, we appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time, brother.
Great. Thank y'all.